This is where Education Riddle comes in. Education Riddle is a title that gives a lot of hope. You just have to find the right set of clues. When I say a maze or when I say a mystery, it looks too dark, like the Bermuda Triangle or the aliens. Did they ever, come to Earth? But a riddle is always solvable.
All right. So, hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Book Cafe Podcast. I'm extremely pleased to be talking to Dr. Dawood Vaid, all the way from Mumbai, India. And in today's episode, we will primarily be speaking about his 2018 book, The Education Riddle: The Rise of Concept Schools. So it promises to be a wonderful episode. So do please be sure to watch till the end. But just before that, if you are watching this episode on YouTube, please be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that bell icon. It really helps with the algorithm. And if you are listening to this on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube Music, you'll be sure to continue downloading and supporting the show because we will have more content added very soon. And in fact, it's very fair to say that we have new content added all the time. But as far as this episode goes, let me first do my due diligence by welcoming our guest, Dr. Dawood Vaid. So, hi, Dawood. Welcome to Book Cafe Podcast.
Well, thank you so much, Omar, and it's a pleasure to come to such an illustrious. I've been seeing the other panelists or the other people who've gone in a podcast, so I feel very privileged. Thank you so much.
It's our pleasure. Thank you so much for making the time to speak to us. So, Daud, I know for a fact that you are an educator, you are an avid reader, you're also an author, and you're also a sports fanatic. And as the host of the show, I am so proud to call you a friend as well. But for the sake of our viewers and listeners who haven't had the pleasure of reading your book yet, and who may be also discovering you as well for the very first time, do please take this moment to formally introduce yourself.
Sure. So let me begin with where I grew up and
Yeah.
not very far away from you, or
Mhm.
almost. I think your viewers are very global. I can see it's Zimbabwe and Mexico and India now in your chart. So I grew up in Kolkata, but my real foundation years were in Andaman Nicobar, a lovely, group of islands in the Bay of Bengal.
Yeah.
And that's where I realized that there's so much to learn just being around nature, Omar. I'm a Gujarati, so we Gujaratis rule India right now. So there are a lot of things from the Prime Minister's office to a lot of people around.
Mm.
And I did my engineering in Chennai. So those who know India, I've been going north, south, east, west across India. The only mistake I made in my life was getting, falling in love with a Mumbai girl. And that's where I'm stuck now for the last 15 years.
Absolutely. Well, I'm sure that your heart must be in Mumbai because you are stationed in Mumbai at the moment. But coming back to the book, Daud, I must say that I really enjoyed reading the book and I have learned so much from it. And we have so much to unpack, which I'm sure that for our viewers and listeners, it will be quite informative and edifying as well, if I may say so. So let's start with the title of the book. You've named it The Education Riddle: The Rise of Concept Schools. So help us understand why you've named it The Education Riddle. Why is it a riddle instead of a mystery or a puzzle or something else? And what exactly is the definition of a concept school? So let's take it from there.
I always believe judge a book by its cover and the title, and I kind of incline towards watching movies where somebody has given a lot of thought about what the title stands. The title itself is half the answer, Omar.
Mm.
When I say a maze or when I say a mystery, it looks too dark, like the Bermuda Triangle or the aliens. Did they ever, come to Earth? But a riddle is always solvable. You just have to
Mm.
find the right set of clues. I
Mm.
believe education follows the same tradition. Somewhere we just need to know the clues to right education. And this is where Education Riddle comes in. Education Riddle is a title that gives a lot of hope. All we need as seekers find the right clues, which are always there. Somehow we miss the obvious. Maybe I grew up with a lot of Byomkesh Bakshi and Sherlock Holmes, so
Mm.
that's an influence in the title. The
Right.
concept
Yeah.
school,
Yeah. The
I
concept.
also had a lot of my upbringing, a lot of my travels across India, Europe, shaped up my idea of what I believe a concept school should be. From the Waldorf philosophy to Maria Montessori when she started with the early preschool model to Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore's Shanti Niketan when my father took me when I was a very young
Mhm.
child, or the Jana Krishnamurti ashram schools, which are very popular in India, Omar. The concept schools are where you pick up an idea, a theme, a central idea, and the school develops the idea. Unfortunately, our schools follow the factory model where you try to do everything. You could be a science major, an arts literate, a literature buff, everything in one go. That's
Right.
not how the world works. So, a concept school is we pick up a certain skill. It could be entrepreneurship, it could be creativity, and you hone those skills, which is what I see the way forward for most of the education institutions.
Understood. So as I understand it, it's more specialized rather than more generalized as an education system. Have I understood that properly?
To an extent, absolutely yes. And I
Mhm.
believe this is not for a certain set of schools. It
Mhm.
is what every school should aim for.
Right.
When you
Okay.
watch a TV channel, you don't go looking for mysterious places on a BBC. You would watch National Geography for that. You would not watch a cartoon on a sports network. I believe schools need to find out their mojo. Schools need to find out what they are good at and thrive in that, while other areas can also be part of it. This is
Right.
what a concept school looks like.
Understood. Yeah, absolutely. And I found it very fascinating because, growing up in Bangladesh, I believe that all our school systems are pretty much the same. So we only divided into English medium and Bengali medium schools. But the idea of a concept school was so alien to me until I actually read your book. So that's why I said that I treasure any book that teaches me something new. And I have to say that this was like a real eye opener for me. So thank you so much for that. So you mentioned, Rip Van Winkle in one of the anecdotes of the story of the book. Would you like to elaborate more about that as to why you mentioned in the book that Rip Van Winkle would be overawed by the change between the years 1900 to 2000, but he would feel right at home walking into a school? So tell us more about that.
Sometimes as an author, you love to listen more. Umar, I would just go on listening to your, describing certain aspects of the book and the way you pointed out. These are stories we grew up with. The frog and what's the thirsty crow, or the Ace of Fables, or the Panch Tantra we have in India. Rip Van Winkle has been one of those stories we grew up with. But this is the idea that most of the thing, the world that he grew up with, is very alien today. He must have seen horse carriages running across, and today he see a self-driving Tesla car. Probably not in the streets of Dhaka and Mumbai right now. Tesla don't dare enter our streets yet, but at some point, it is very alien. A mobile phone is an alien concept to him. Until he visits school, and what has happened in our schools? Last 50 years, the schools have primarily remained the same. Our whiteboards have only replaced the blackboards, but you
Mhm.
still see the same benches. There's a concept of sage on stage. So the teacher is the all knowing. The teacher probably is the one who sets all the tones. You only ask questions if you're allowed to. You can't interrupt. Suddenly, Rip Van Winkle, and it's more like a metaphor. Nothing has changed within the school system.
Mhm.
And I'll just add a modern day theory.
Yeah.
And Umar, besides cricket, I love movies. So I watch a lot of movies, and perhaps I see that entertainment is an important integral aspect which schools are devoid of.
Mhm.
You know,
Okay.
Sir Ken Robinson, one of my favorite authors, says, whenever I pass by a school and a jail, I feel sorry for people inside. And it's so true. Our kids are cramped in a school where they don't want to go on a Monday morning, which is very much the corporate lives we live in.
Mhm.
Can
Right.
we change something? In 50 years, what have the school done to reinvent themselves? And Rip Van Winkle comes with RIP. That's rest in
Mm.
peace if our
Right.
education system do not change.
Well, that's very succinctly put and very well articulated. Yes, I can completely understand and sympathize with that point where we have to change with the times. So we have to let go of the colonial system of education where every student was sort of like an automaton, going through the same process and then coming out as a homogeneous product at the end of it. So I believe what you're trying to say is we need to be more heterogeneous in treating our students differently and trying to get the best out of each student, to focus on their creative minds and souls and ensure that everyone is a contributing and meaningful member of society. So yes, that's wonderfully said. Let's talk about one of the underlying concepts of the book, where you talk about the triangle theory, which is, I believe, the bedrock of the entire book. And let me just quote what you've written. The triangle theory is made up of three components: the educator, the educated, and the environment. I think the first two is extremely clear, but can you tell us about the third aspect of it, the environment, and how pertinent it is to the triangle theory? So do walk us through that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Uh, to begin with, in the basic geometry, it is said triangle is the first shape with any size which is the perfect shape. A triad for that matter, a stool. You don't have two legs, but the three makes it whole. And the concept of three has always been very integral from the mythology, from the idea of everything goes in threes, from the three little pigs in a story of the three musketeers. It gives you a sense of completeness.
Hmm.
So when I said about what could define education, I said three aspects of education makes it very, very complete. Most of the time when we look at a school, we say the only stakeholders are the students who are studying, the educated. But what we forget is the educator, the one who gives the knowledge. But what we also discount, Omar, is the environment that shapes it. Just an example. Today we are talking about a lot of humidity in Dhaka and Mumbai, or for that matter, a lot of heat in Africa. The only best way to solve the heat is an igloo, but you can't pick up an igloo and put it in Africa. It doesn't work that way,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
The environment is so different. There is a test, and because a lot of educators, I hope we can reach out to. There's a test called the PISA, Performance Indication for Student Assessment. The PISA, it's a
Hmm.
worldwide test, and ironically, and I'm sadly not very proud to say that when we took the test as in India, there were 73 countries that took the test. And India has been backbencher. Perhaps it represents my education system. We stood 72nd, and we refused to take the test next year.
I see.
But the
Okay.
problem was nobody told the politicians that do not be embarrassed. You are competing with South Korea and Finland, which are very different environments,
Hmm.
right?
Right.
You don't take an igloo and put in Africa. That's the environment, Omar,
Hmm.
where we say that what works in Europe will not work in India or for that matter in South America. If
Hmm.
we don't consider the environment, the linguistic background, the accents, the cultural differences, it is so different.
Right.
Just elaborating this on a little part, there are two beautiful books I would love to add on.
Yeah.
I think they're far better than Education Riddle. For an author, it's
Hmm.
still difficult. I have
Hmm.
to swallow a lot of pride when I say that. But there's a book called The Promise of Pencil by Adam Brown. He came to India and he saw a street urchin asking something. He said, "What gift would you like from me?" And the little boy says, "A pencil." And Adam Brown was shaken. What? And that is where he started the POP cycle, Promise of Pencil. He calls it the room to read.
Hmm.
A
Very
pencil
true.
may not be significant for a child somewhere in a more privileged background. It is very significant in India, the environment.
Right.
The second book is called Three Cups of Tea. This is Greg Motteson. He went to Afghanistan, and what he realized, the hospitality of the Afghans, we only think of them as not a it's a very hostile place, but the generosity blew him over.
Hmm.
If I were to start an education program, I would start with the strengths of generosity. Maybe I would have a wazwan, a dish, and I have more students coming in than a blackboard and a conversation with books. The environment truly shapes a child's ideology, and I think we miss out the big point. That's where the threes complete itself.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes, absolutely. And yeah, I think that, as you rightly said, that anybody who isn't as familiar with the education system, or this whole genre, would probably assume that there's only two sides to the story, where you have the educator and the one who is being educated, the student, so teacher and student. But the fact that the environment also needs to be conducive to for that education to flourish, I mean, that's something that really gets missed out on. And in fact, you had a wonderful analogy in the book with regards to this man right here behind me, Adolf Hitler, and Jesse Owens. So perhaps you could tell us a bit about who was Jesse Owens and what was the environment that was conducive to him, that enabled him to achieve success in life. So do walk us through that analogy.
All right. I could just, barge in your house and pick up your books. There's a Nelson Mandela and there's Long Walk to Freedom. And I'm a big supporter and a big fan of the BLM, the Black Lives Movement. And I believe it has given birth to many such movements, many such ideas around the world that when you fight for a certain right, you will reach out. Omar, on a very, on a very funny note, there was a comment that if ever a black man becomes a president in the White House, the pigs will fly. And Barack Obama, when he became the president, there was swine flu. I'm sorry for my bad pun, but
That's a good
people
one.
would not even believe that
Right.
somebody like Barack Obama, a black man representing a small minority in the United States, could represent. It's a powerful dream. Jesse Owens did what world would later realized how amazing he was. There were a lot of people who boycott, and I'm not a very big fan of a boycott movement. It could be a cold drink, it could be a certain concept. I said no, convey the message in the right way. I think boycott is a very smaller means. What I meant is 1936 there was Berlin Olympics. The
Mm,
waves of Second World War were on the card. People said we will not go to Germany because we don't want to, meet Hitler. Jesse Owen, a black star, said I'll do the opposite. I'll go to Berlin, I'll win gold where Hitler is forced to acknowledge me. And that's
mhm.
what he did.
Right. Yeah.
I think that's a more powerful conversation than not representing yourself.
Yes,
Yes.
indeed, and what a magnificent story, and what a way to actually shut Hitler up and his whole Aryan theory that the Aryans are superior to every other race on Earth. So yes, I think that it's a wonderful story with Jesse Owens confronting Hitler and coming back from the 1936 Berlin Olympics with not just one but four Olympic gold medals. So yes, what a wonderful story that was. I was really pleased to learn a bit more about Jesse Owens. So I knew about him, but not in great details. So another wonderful aspect of your book is that it really aroused a lot of curiosity about all these historical figures that I have behind me. So in fact, you can see that there are actually six books behind me, and the only reason I picked all these six is because each and every one of them is mentioned in your book. So in addition to learning about the education riddle, all these side stories and analogies are something that was really a treat to read. So that's what makes the book such a fascinating read. Let's come to the second person right next to Hitler, and I have Bahadur Shah Zafar, the last Mughal emperor. So there was a wonderful story that you had about him in the book. Tell us what it was about.
I love the way you created the snippets out of the book and made it into you. You could be a movie director, Omar. I mean, for all the listeners out there, be a producer. There is a director waiting for you, and I truly believe
You're
the way
too
you
kind.
created.
Yeah.
You're amazing with your ideas and insights. Bahadur Shah Zafar, he was in a decline. The Mughal Empire, the once, like the British Empire, was in a decline, and he was about to be deported to Myanmar, the then Burma, and the British has said that, what is your last wish? You're not going to see the world anymore. What do you want to do? And Bahadur Shah Zafar said, just be kind enough and give me few kids
Mm.
so I can teach them, and that's all I want to do.
Right.
And you see the smartest the Britishers, they said, in Hindi it comes a very very beautifully that, tak chala gaya but khwab nahi gaye. The reign has gone, the kingdom, the throne has gone, but the desire to rule has not gone.
Mm,
And what they essentially meant, Omar, was if you educate a group, you will rule again.
mm.
And this is what I believe in. I mean, there was another beautiful scholar who visited a school, and he said that, where do you want to go? He said, show me the nurseries and the preschools of your country. I'll tell you what your country will be in 25 years,
Wow.
because that's the
Wow.
growth.
Yes.
And I think if education, we focus a lot, just adding on, I hope this podcast reaches more educators. We focus a lot on the top down,
Mhm.
the colleges, the universities. If only we could focus on the funnel, the small one, the preschools and the primary areas of education system, we can, change the way our countries are.
Absolutely. Yeah. And what a wonderful analogy, saying that, show me what your students, what a kindergarten class is like, and I can tell you where your country is going to be in 20 years. So it shows just how powerful the educator is in framing young minds and building them up. And of course, as you rightly said in the book, that students are the future of the country, of a country, any country. So it really shows how important the role of the educator is. Let's come to the third person that I have here, right next to Bahadur Shah Zafar, of course, Nelson Mandela, the president of South Africa, who spent 27 years in Robben Island in prison. And you had a story about him right at the end of the book. So please tell us what it was about.
I think if there are some heroes I can talk eternally for, is Nelson Mandela is one of them. Nelson Mandela had this amazing ability, and there are many stories, and I can pick up just the one, maybe not the one mentioned in the book, the ability to forgive and the
Mhm.
ability to foresee. And anyone watching again, please watch this movie Invictus, where Matt Damon was the captain of the rugby league, and Nelson Mandela, when he came out of his prison, 27 years in a prison, Omar, that's some of our lives.
Mm.
And it is said that he was sitting at a restaurant, a very beautiful court, and there was someone sitting trembling, seeing Nelson Mandela. And Mandela gets up and goes to him, and the great, they call him Mahiba, the word they use for Mandela. He goes and he greets him, and the person opposite to him was a jailer who mistreated him for years. His letters would be cut, his clothes would not be given. Nelson Mandela fought to just wear long pants. I keep saying, ask small demands. Don't expect a drastic volcano tsunami change. Ask for small changes, and that is what leads to it. Mandela treated him with so much of kindness. He said, I don't know if I can think of a man who will be so kind. Again, the way Mandela took the white minority of South Africa and supported the only thing they loved, rugby. It's like,
Mhm.
us, I know you're a big Sakif fan. It's like just taking cricket out of your life.
Right.
Somebody coming and giving impetus to us. This is what Nelson Mandela is. Nelson Mandela always used to say that every night in the jail, I used to wake up the same dream that I am seeing everybody in my family except myself.
Mm.
Omar, we have no idea of the sacrifices they have made. I have not seen a prophet. I've only heard about them from people about these are the modern day prophets. These are giants for whom the ideals of the world, I think we can go on. Is Mandela taught in a school the way he should be taught? Is Jesse Owen taught in the school the way he's taught? Is Muhammad Ali taught in the school? These are heroes I think our school needs to talk more about.
Yes, indeed,
So
indeed.
we miss out a bigger point when we don't talk about these heroes.
Oh, yes, definitely. And of course, what a wonderful unifying force Nelson Mandela was, especially, at the end of apartheid South Africa. And of course, just bringing it back to current times, we see something similar in Israel, Palestine, where the apartheid has been going on for so long. And of course, we're waiting to see when a figure like Mandela will come out of this and unify both the peoples and ensure that there's peace and prosperity going forward. But let's come to the other person right above Mandela. And of course, I'm talking about Sun Tzu. And you had some wonderful anecdotes in the book as to what kind of a person are you. So you had a question in the book that which animal are you? Are you a turtle? Are you a teddy bear? Are you a shark, a fox, or an owl? So I believe that the turtle is analogous to the avoider. The teddy bear is the accommodator. The shark is pretty much the non-compromiser, the strong person. And you talked about Art of War with regards to the shark. The fox is the compromiser, and the owl is the collaborator. But if I were to ask you this question, Daud, which animal are you amongst these five? What would be your answer?
Oh, oh, wow, that's flipping the book onto me. Umar, I was about to ask what who are you? And when I do that, I will identify myself as Fox, but
Hmm.
immediately the response that comes to your mind, you must feel. So, before I tell you who they are, who are you? The shark, the turtle, the fox.
Who am I?
Who are
Okay.
you? The
Okay.
owl and the
Yes,
teddy bear.
I believe that even before I finished reading all five of those options, I went with the owl because I'm always told by people that I'm a bit in my own world where I'm always thinking about things that are probably, not the same kind of topics that everybody else has on their mind at that particular point in time. So I believe that because of the fact that the owl sits on a branch and has a bird's eye view of everything. So I assume that okay, I must be the owl because I'm always thinking about stuff which are a bit more otherworldly, which is probably a bit different from what everybody else is thinking. But after reading what you wrote about the owl, that the owl is probably more for long term thinking. So I would say that perhaps I'm somewhere in between the fox and the owl. But if I had to pick one, I'd probably go with the owl. So,
Wonderful, Omar. The reason, had you not mentioned that you're owl, intuition is a gift, and I would have told that you're an owl, perhaps just out of intuition.
mhm,
So let me elaborate, or tell you what an owl is,
mhm,
and none of them are good or bad. See, this is the beauty. Art of War, what Sun Tzu writes, and which is so strange that it's still relevant in today's time, is it says this: forget winning the battles, win wars.
mm,
Sometimes we are too keen on winning smaller battles. Perhaps it could be a fight with a local pedestrian when you're driving a car, or it could be just a shout out at the receptionist in a hotel, or the waiter where the menu is not wrong, and we forget that the very reason we came to a restaurant was to enjoy the dinner, not to pick up a fight. That's
mhm,
art of war.
right.
We just don't know which battles to pick up. And these animals, some imaginary, some real, kind of exemplifies who we are. An owl is a long, far-sighted person, which is what I see you. You the way you subtly put in a comment or a point. Some of your posts are so beautiful. You may be writing on a cricket, Omar, and you're writing philosophy. I read philosophy. And those who are not following your book podcast are missing out some big term. So that's what an owl
Very
is.
kind. Yeah.
In a negotiation treaty, an owl is someone who may be quiet a lot of time, but when there's insight to be given, people look at the owl, which is where the wise owl is. Fox, on the other hand, is a very cunning person. Now, cunning is a very deceptive word. Cunning not in a negative way, but a fox is a win-win person. So if I were a fox and I see a parent, I do a lot of marital counseling, right? And sometimes
Mhm.
I see that I'm here. If 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 a husband wins and a wife loses, it's not a victory; it's a
Mhm.
loss.
Mhm.
Rather, I let both of them win, which is fox. The fox made excellent negotiators, but there are days when you need to put your head inside and not bother about it.
Right.
In Dubai, which is very interesting, there were more traffic jam for the bystanders. When there would be traffic, people will slow down to see what's happened. They
Oh,
are they instead they should become the turtle. The
right.
Dubai police levied $100 dirham fine then for only
Mhm.
bystanders, and I love that part because I hated stopping for because if one car would wait for 30 seconds and there are 20 cars, I'm already late by 10 minutes.
Mhm.
So
Right.
a
Right.
turtle there is a successful person. So these are the concepts where we talk about it.
Right.
And the beauty of it, Omar, is if I'm a fox, I would rather have my spouse, my partner, as a shark who's go-getter. Sharks are go-getter; they can smell blood.
Right.
I've got a couple of sharks, not only my wife, my daughters as well. But it balances a lot.
Right. Right.
So there we are.
Oh, there we go. Wonderful. Yes, I actually do sales for a living. So I'm thinking that I should probably trade in my owl mentality for a shark's mentality because that would really help me to close more of my sales. But having
You
said that,
can smell the sale.
I smell the sale, yes. But having said that, yes, with regards to the shark, I can understand how, I think in terms of marital bliss, where you said that in the book you mentioned that Sun Tzu says that if you know yourself and you know your opponent, then you will not have to fear even 100 battles because you know exactly what you're getting into. And I think that as bring it back to what you said about marital advice and etc. I find it more prudent to let my wife win all those battles so that at least we have the war that I'm winning in the end, which is a happy wife, happy life, etc. So all those things are all coming back to me. So yeah, that's
Well,
wonderful.
I must
And
add one beautiful, I always tell that in my marriage workshop that, a good successful relationship, a good successful marital relationship depends on the one, so we always say communication is the key, Umar. So one is a speaker and the other is how do you complete it? So between two people, so
the
one is the
listener
speaker, the other,
and the other is the
no,
listener.
the other is the husband.
Okay.
So that's where it ends.
Okay.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
sorry. I had to put that in.
Right, right. That's
So,
that's really wonderfully said. Yes, I couldn't agree more. So one is the speaker and the other is the husband. Yes. Let's come to another book, Dawood Bhai. So this one is something that I have right above Bahadur Shah Zafar and in between in right next to Sun Tzu. And this is I don't think you can read the label, but it's actually Plato's Republic. And of course, you had a wonderful story in the book about the three wise Greek men, Plato, Aristotle, and their mentor, Socrates. And it has to do with the thirst for knowledge. So the story was actually about Socrates and somebody who wanted to be mentored by him. So I'll let you walk us through it. So tell us about that wonderful story between Socrates and his potential student. What was it about?
oh, this is wonderful. It talks about the desire and how much do you desire to do something. And I must add that I'm fascinated with Greek and the mythology and the way, even Percy Jackson, I love it because it involves so much of Zeus and Poseidon and Hydra. And not just them, it's Archimedes, the follow-up students. Like this, they created an image of thirst for knowledge. So there's a student who comes to Socrates and he says,
Mhm,
I desire to learn from you, O master. And he says,
mhm,
come, fine. Or perhaps he asks him to come the other day to a river bank. And the young, gullible student comes to the master, and Socrates shakes his head, shoves him in the water, and lets him, experience the sense of breathlessness.
mhm,
And he's helpless, he's desperate, he tries to, shake him off. And after a few seconds, of course, he pulls him out and he says, what was that, master? This is the day where you're desiring a breath of fresh air, just a little bit of it. I think COVID taught us that how important it is. He said, yes, the day you desire to seek knowledge, come back to me.
Mm.
And I think it was so relevant, so beautiful. The way today we seek knowledge, how thirsty are we? Picking up a mobile phone and watching reels on Instagram is very easy. Picking up a book is very difficult. When you do the difficult, the easy becomes easy. It's like hitting a gym or going to a McDonald's. And what I see, I'm not flattering you, but I see the meticulous planning. The fact you compile those six books and all of them relate to what I added to, it shows the desire you want to convey to the audience. Trust me, this 45 minutes is far better than a university lecture, which is just for the credits. They may not get a credit listening to your podcast, Umar Bhai, but they will get far better than a university certificate. Do we have those desires?
Do we have those desires? Well, you're extremely kind, Daud. So thank you so much once again for that, and for sharing that story about Socrates and his student. Yes, and coming back to your point about the desire to learn. In today's day and age, let me just throw this out to you that given that there's so many different things that we can do to occupy our time, watch TV or play a video game, etc. It seems as though people have very little time to actually read books. But given that you're an avid reader yourself, Daud, how do you manage it? Please tell us about that. And I know that you have one wonderful story in the book about how you managed to get in more reading hours, but I will let you take us through that. Please tell us about that. I'm sure that this will be wonderful and edifying for all of our viewers and listeners who are watching this and listening to this. So tell us about that.
I think reading is like building your muscle memory. It takes time.
Mhm.
You don't build them by, and you don't become fat by eating one McDonald's burger. Go ahead, enjoy yourself, devour it. But
Mhm.
the moment you do it four in a week, and then you do four another week, you end up having all those fats around you. You read one page at a time. And I think, Omar, the way I see today's reading, I say just read. One is become a hoarder. I do not mind. Nassim Taleb says that there's a hoarder mentality. You love buying books. I said,
Mhm.
I don't shy. If at least you're putting your money in the right place, some
Right.
publisher and some authors being
Mhm.
benefited. I
Right.
said, do that.
Mhm.
When you have books around you, Vygotsky, one of the early educators, says something called ZPD. I'm just adding a concept called zone of proximal development.
Mhm.
What it says is whatever is to your proximity is what you'll pick it up. If
Mhm.
I have a mobile phone next to me, I'm tempted to pick a mobile phone. If I walk by a refrigerator and there is a piece of cake, I'm tempted to do it. Do you tempt yourself with books? Is what I tell myself. So if you see, I kind of even sometimes for my daughters, I plant books. So the book right next to them, my head. So okay, what are we gonna do? And I see sometimes they're bored and they just out of boredom they pick up a book and we're just reading around it. That's one area to learn. And everybody has different strategies. You may have yours. I would love to hear one before I do all the talking. But my other strategy is if there's a book I love to talk about it. So I just finished, and I saw a beautiful comment on desperately seeking Shah Rukh. That's referring to Shah Rukh Khan, and I said, okay, what can I learn from this book? And Omar, trust me, every book doesn't have to be a complete meal in itself. You might just love the starters of the book, and that's enough for you.
Mhm.
I
Right.
always ask people that pick up a book which is excellent, exciting, read enough so that you manage to squeeze something out of it, even just how do you say, just a little juice out of it, and that would be wonderful.
Mhm.
40 Rules of Love, Arif Shalaf. I'm not a very avid fiction reader, but that's one book along with Kite Runners, Khalid Hussaini, I can recommend to anybody. Tuesdays with Maurice. So the idea is the more range you've got,
Mhm.
it's like if you have appetite for all kind of food, you will never go hungry. I think let's become a gourmet reader.
One, wow, let's become a gourmet reader. I think that is put so eloquently. Yes, I absolutely love that. Let's become a gourmet reader. I'm going to steal that from you, and I'm sure I won't be able to after this podcast goes out. So, but thank you for asking that question about what my reading strategy is. And honestly speaking, what I do is that because I'm in sales, so I have to travel a lot outside of my base, which is Dhaka. So when I'm traveling, for example, out of town to maybe go on a sales call or a meeting, I'm very privileged, to have a sales team, as part of my sales team, driving to the location together. So I just zone out into my book during the commute. So an hour's drive outside of Dhaka, or 2 hours outside of Dhaka. So if you come back and forth, so that's 2 + 2, 4 hours, 2 to 4 hours. So you can just get lost inside a book. And I think that in today's day and age, the audiobook also helps a lot. So I wasn't very keen on audiobooks because I didn't really understand it all that well. But during COVID times, I discovered, the good thing about audiobooks is that you can especially in the Google Play Store. So, for example, a lot of people probably use the Kindle. I prefer to use the Google Play Store because whenever we download a book on the Google Play Store, you have the option to either read it or to have the read aloud feature on Android devices. So it's not a plugin for Google Play by no means, but I'm just saying that because I'm able to switch between audio and visual, so I find that to be quite fulfilling, basically. So that would be my strategy. And coming to your strategy as well in the book, I also love what you wrote, that whenever you go into a meeting, you always carry a bag with a book that you're currently reading, so that even if you can squeeze in one page in between your meeting or waiting for the person that you have a meeting with, you're able to actually get in your reading within that short space of time. Have I got that correct? Yeah.
Absolutely. And I love your
Mhm.
strategy. I mean, this is exactly how we grow and we learn. The
Mhm.
idea is sometimes we always think, okay, how am I going to read 10 pages or 15 pages in a day? For those who are non-readers or those who
Mhm.
don't think are inclined to, I said, don't start with 10, start with one.
Right.
Start with one line.
Mhm.
It's like running a race. You don't become a marathoner by running, the half marathon in one day. You
Mhm.
start by jogging, you start by sprinting, and then you start taking a little step forward. That's how books are. If
Mhm.
I just, and sometimes to fall in love with a book, it starts with one page. So
Right.
sometimes I may not like a book, I'll keep it with me in between the meetings. I'll pick up a page and I'll enjoy that page. Even sometimes it's a random page, Omar. I don't even have to start from chapter one. The author will not feel offended if you do not start from chapter one. I
Yeah.
keep telling everybody. The
Mhm.
author feel offended if you buy his book and you don't read her
And you
or
don't
her
read
book.
it, right?
So yes, yes,
Yes.
just read is the kind.
Wonderful. So in other words, little.
And
Yes, please. Okay.
No, no,
So
just the acronym read, Omar. I'm just adding on as an educationist. There's
right.
a concept we introduced in our school, the Golden Sparrow, called, it is called DEAR.
Mhm.
Just the whole thing around DEAR is drop everything and read. So we have a
Mhm.
small whistle period in the school, which is very, very beautiful across schools now, where you do this DEAR. So you just have a whistle and non-judgmental reading. So the students read for 10 minutes uninterrupted. If there were a guest, anybody would come and read. My maid the other day, just the beginning of the day, she felt offended because we did not have a book for her. So we bought a local Marathi book, and she said, "No, I read English. Give me grade two English book." And
Mhm.
that was the highest point, the joy that somebody wants to read a book in a language that may not be very, it may be an alien language, but there's a reason that they pick up a book with.
Mhm.
So yes,
Okay.
let's do dears in a
Wonderful.
home also.
Okay, fascinating, fascinating. So I think that in other words, exactly what you said before that is that little drops make an ocean, and even the longest journey starts with a single step, right? So if every day you can go through at least one page, before you know it, within a couple of days, you finished an entire book. So I think that's a wonderful strategy. Let's come to the last book that I have here, and this one is Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. But the book was actually commissioned, if memory serves me right, because he was having a dialogue with Andrew Carnegie, the steel magnate, and who was at one time the richest man in the world. Now, please tell us about this wonderful story between Napoleon Hill and Andrew Carnegie. What happened in the interaction between the two, and what did Napoleon Hill actually discover about very successful people? Yeah.
Oh, this is wonderful. And I think, there are spin-offs. I'm a patent lawyer, and you make more money in spin-offs. Like
Mhm.
you trying to work on one product and then other products actually earn you more money. So pardon me, but I will add two spin-off stories along with Napoleon Hill's. And Napoleon Hill had a commission job by Andrew Carnegie, the one who had Carnegie Hall. There's a small story where somebody said, "How do I reach the Carnegie Hall?" Somebody wanted an actual direction, and he said, "Practice, practice, practice."
Mhm.
And what he meant is, how do you literally stand and deliver a good speech? Napoleon Hill, when he was commissioned to interview few people, for the successful role, who the conglomerates are, who are business successful people, he found certain traits in them. And he
Mhm.
found a basic thread which connected all of them together. What he found fascinating is that people are not talking enough about it. And this book is a very early 1960 book. You're talking about 60 years back. he created a thread which says, look, you don't have to be extraordinary. You just have to do ordinary things extraordinarily well. And that is how this book became a biggest seller, Omar. What I see, a modern version of Napoleon Hill. A lot of people may not relate to this book or Dale Carnegie's book about how to make friends. And what I feel is that a modern version of this called a tribe of mentors.
Mm-hmm.
Timothy Ferris.
Tim
I
Ferriss, right?
found
Right.
Tim Ferriss, right.
Mm-hmm.
Tribe of Mentor is an amazing book. He's done something very similar. He's interviewed people, and that is one book I heard on a podcast, Omar. And it was more like an interview. It was like a
Mm-hmm.
podcast on a podcast. I strongly recommend that if you want to skip Napoleon Hill, go to Tim Ferriss's Tribe of Mentors. A book you don't have to read at one go. It
Mm-hmm.
took me over a year to read the book because so many interviews, so varied people. But what I found are certain qualities that connected them together. One of them was reading,
Mm-hmm.
traveling, and experiencing people. So if you start reading, which is when I do when I'm traveling a lot, and if you start traveling, seeing the world around, and when you start meeting people, you already on a path to success, path to glory. And I think this is very powerful analogy I tell my students around. Read, travel, and meet people.
So read, travel, and meet people, and the fact that reading is one of the common traits among successful people. So I think that's absolutely wonderful. I'm so glad to have found it in your book. So yeah, thank you so much, Daud, for that. I think that it was really wonderful to see all six of these books referenced. I mean, all six of these personalities referenced in the education riddle. And I just want to deep dive a little bit into a couple of other concepts that you'd mentioned in the book. One of them being the difference between skills versus certification. And this was an interesting debate that you had in the book that I'd really like to get your thoughts on. So, where exactly do you stand? So, let me just actually give a small preamble to it. I believe that what you're trying to say in the book is that we prioritize the certification more than the actual learning. So, when you have a course where which teaches you skills, for example, maybe something on Khan Academy where you go through all the videos and you're able to brush up on certain skills. Is that more useful, or is it more useful to have a Harvard education, for example, which gives you a certificate at the end of it? Where do you stand in this debate? Are you for the certification from an Ivy League college like Harvard, or do you feel that in today's day and age, having a better all-round set of skills is what's going to be more useful to the future generation going forward? So do walk us through that.
Lovely. Remember, I'm the fox, so I stand in the middle. Yes, which is what I would love to do, a win-win. But over the years, I'll give you an analogy, which is not a book analogy or any of the education analogy, but it helps you set the tone, especially when I talk to young students. A lot of us waste our time in the wedding, the actual day, then the marriage,
Mhm.
which is the relationship building. We plan the wedding as in the guests, the invite, the decor, the menu, and we forget the real part of crux is when you live with a partner, and it could be anything. That is exactly the skill and certification go. We are so focused on where you have studied rather than what have you gained from them. An Ivy League is not a guaranteed success.
Mhm.
This is where we come to. Today's time, you can see there's a beautiful company called Zerodha, one of the leading stock financial company in India. And Nikhil Kamath, one of my heroes whose podcasts are beautiful, he's a homeschooler. And I see so many of the people who believe that education is a journey. It's not a document at the end of it. A lot of people, the biggest accidents are done with people who have driving licenses, Omar,
Mhm.
right?
Right,
So that's a certification. If you don't know how to drive, you'll end up crashing not just your car, somebody else's car.
right,
That
right.
is the reason. Are you skilled enough? Reading is a skill. Which school, which course teaches you to read? They give you books, but a skill called reading is not taught, not developed. Somewhere in the debate, this is where there was a question asked, a beautiful question by top Ivy leagues or the corporates after the league. He said, the CEOs of the corporates, the Fortune 500 company, Omar, they said, we'll prefer somebody who has done a Coursera or Udemy or a Khan Academy course because it shows that you're passionate. Remember the Socrates, someone going down? All of it
Right,
as a thread is connected. It shows you're self-driven. It shows that you have a thirst and a desire to learn. Then somebody who's done an Ivy League course because you just went into a course and you finished the Harvard League.
right.
There's a book I'm currently reading called Excellent Sheep. And
See.
trust me, it says that if you are not, it says that everybody at Yale is miserable. If you're not miserable, you're not at Yale. And I found it very amusing. So I'm more inclined to the skill part because
Mm.
what's the point of a degree which is not qualified enough?
Hmm. Yes, I think I definitely have to agree with you on that because as I've heard a lot of people say, education is finite, but learning is a lifelong activity, right? And I think that the book that you've written really does encapsulate that. And of course, at the end of the day, we have to question, is our education system actually preparing students for what is out there in the real world? And I love that analogy that you also have in the book, that don't prepare the road for the student, prepare the student for whatever road he or she may encounter, what you have
Absolutely.
right
And,
now.
and there's one more that don't teach the curriculum, teach the child.
Don't
And
teach the
Umar,
curriculum, teach the child, right?
just on a common love of ours, the cricket, what makes certain batsmen so great is the range of shots. A Virat Kohli, I'm biased, I'm in Indian here. A Virat Kohli is good. Unfortunately, our strike rates are being questioned now. Oh, let's keep it common that Joss Butler is wonderful because for one particular overdrive, he can hit a lap shot, he can switch hit, he can go straight drive. That's what reading gives you. Omar, I just noticed the kind of vocabulary choices you have. Preamble, finite. I mean, look at you could choose any word and you choose a specific word. That's the edge a skill gives. Reading is a skill. I mean, if our readers, if our listeners take nothing from a conversation for the last 1 hour and except take the fact that reading makes you a leader, that will be good enough. And that's a book's title also. There's a title in my book called Leaders Are Readers or Readers Are
Okay,
Leaders.
okay.
Either way,
Oh,
it
wonderful.
works
So
both ways.
Daud, one more thing that you had in the book was the difference between a syllabus and a curriculum. So I have to confess that before reading the book, I assumed that they were both one and the same. So would you mind telling us a bit about what exactly is the difference between a syllabus and a curriculum? So please go ahead. Yeah.
I mean, as an educator, I kind of find offensive when my teachers confuse between letters and alphabet. And I ask them, how many alphabets in English? And they say 26. I said, no, that's letters. And I'm sorry because I try to teach them, but I don't want to embarrass anybody. I said, there is only one alphabet in Chinese, in Arabic, in Bengali, in Hindi, in English. It's the
Mhm.
letters that, and as an educator, that's a cardinal sin because that means we are not researching enough. But the
Mhm.
same way goes for most of our teachers is we confuse the curriculum, which is a complete thing, to syllabus, which is a very specific thing.
Mhm.
Syllabus is what you complete for an examination, but it is not confined. So, example, let me take arts, a subject which very often we don't talk about it. If I say arts curriculum, it could involve, Mona Lisa, the painter, Vasco, Leonardo da Vinci, the Cubism, the Realism, Indian art, worldly, the folk art. It's the entire range. The curriculum is not confined to just art, the artists, the museums. So you're looking at Loa, you can look at all the other museums. That's the curriculum. Syllabus could be just teaching Cubism for that one portion.
Mhm.
The
Right.
word
Yeah.
curriculum, just to elaborate a little, comes from the word currici.
Mhm.
Currici is again a Latin word. When you had the the horses with the chariots, and all of us watched Ben Hur growing up,
Mhm.
these
Right.
obstacles are basically the curriculum that you overcome them and you keep overcoming them over. Curriculum never stops.
Mhm.
Syllabus is confined. So
Yeah.
when I say that teach curriculum, you're talking about lot. You can teach English through poem, through a song, through a movie, and it doesn't stop there.
Yeah.
So a lot
Okay.
of us are
Yeah.
guilty as educators teaching only the syllabus.
Okay, wonderful. So basically, the syllabus is a part of the curriculum. So the curriculum is bigger, and the syllabus makes up a part of it, as you rightly said. And yeah, I
Omar,
mean,
I love how you confine, and I know you're from sales. I take 500 words to explain the same thing you just took 10 to explain. So thank
oh,
you so
okay,
much.
no, no worries. So I'm actually I can't take credit for that because you did have that diagram in the book itself. So I'm just basically putting that out there for our viewers and listeners. But now, thank you so much. What a wonderful, fascinating conversation it's been for the past hour. But just before I let you go, I have a couple of staple questions that I really must ask you. It's something that we ask all of our guests, so it's sort of like a ritual that we have for all of our podcasts. So with your permission, let me just ask you at least two or three of them. And I think you
Please.
already mentioned it that my first question, staple question is always, are you more of a fiction person or a non-fiction person? But I think you already gave that answer that you're more of a fiction person. Sorry, non-fiction person. So within the non-fiction genre, so let me ask you this follow-up question: what kind of non-fiction are you more into? Is it self-development or something else? So do tell us about that. Yeah.
So primarily because of my work in education, I'm more inclined towards pedagogy, into
Mm,
teaching methodologies.
mm,
So it is, there's an entire series by Vygotsky or John Holt, Unschooling, or Marzano, Robert Marzano's book. These are more educationally inclined books, not the very
mm,
popular choices. Dan Tindersmith, he has also a TED Talk. So those are the non-fictions I primarily read a lot. John
mm.
Barrell, Why a School Bus is Yellow. It's how do
Right.
you teach creativity in schools? Sir Ken Robinson. I'm sorry, just maybe a little vanity, Omar. I'm so sorry. I'm just rattling names, but these are some of my favorite books
Oh
that I
no,
read a
no.
lot.
Oh, wonderful. No, no, absolutely not. It's not at all vanity. I love the fact that you mentioned those books. We'll of course have to talk a bit more in depth about those as well. So let me ask you a question though that you actually had in the book, and I've been waiting to ask you this question for a while now. So let me just read it out to you. So the question is, what are five books that you have read, relished, and benefited from? So your own question, which I'm putting out there for you to for our viewers and listeners to know about. Five books.
Let me put it this way. I mean, immediately thinking about on the spot, I think there is this book, The Outliers, which is
Malcolm
beautiful,
Gladwell. Right.
and Malcolm Gladwell. And I think I can see, put the entire series of Malcolm Gladwell, What the Dog Saw. These are some beautiful books that I probably would appreciate. Begin with Why, Simon Sinek, and I'm giving
Mhm.
more of the journal books so that not educational books that I really enjoy.
Mhm.
Sir Ken Robinson's book on creative schooling, or on a similar note. But it is one book I've gifted a lot to a lot of young people. It is The Magic of Thinking Big.
Mhm.
It's a very condensed, very sweet, very easy to read book, and it just propels you to think that there's something beyond you. A very staple book you can just pick up from your bookshelves, from any stores that you have. But I think Magic of Thinking book is a lovely book to read with.
Okay.
If I had to pick up any one book from the fiction category, Omar, it would be The Kite Runner or The Mountain Echoes by Khalid Hosseini. I
Mhm.
mean, please pick up a tissue box before you read those books. They touch you
Oh, wow.
in ways you will not realize it.
Oh yes, yes, a real tearjerker are those novels. So yeah,
True,
thank you
true.
so much, Daud, for that. And
But I also enjoy the Game of Thrones. I'm not endorsing George R. R. Martin, but if there's one fiction category I love reading,
okay.
it would be the GOT series, that
Oh
Song of
wow,
Ice and
A
Fire.
Song of Ice and Fire. Wow, wonderful. So yeah, absolutely. I'm sure that there's a lot of viewers and listeners who may be fans of the TV series, but I think that the books, I'm sure, must be more captivating
Amazing.
because and there's still a few more books left to be written by George R. R. Martin, as far as I know, but which
I hope
hasn't come
so.
out yet. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So I think that that's a great way to actually end today's episode. So let me just conclude by saying that for our viewers and listeners who have been with us all this time, thank you very much for staying till the end. And once again, if you are watching this episode on YouTube, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that bell icon, and put a like on the video because that really helps with the algorithm. The episode will also be available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube Music. So that's YouTube Music that's replacing Google Podcasts. So please be sure to catch it on YouTube Music as well. And you can also follow me on Twitter at Omar Nizam. By the way, though, I believe you mentioned in the book that you're quite active on Twitter. So would you like to give us your Twitter handle?
For all the viewers out there and all the listeners, one day I'm going to do Omar's podcast and I'm going to ask all the difficult questions to him, and I think you'll love it. And this is going to happen, the vice versa. The fox is out here, but you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Dawood Mindset. So it's
Dawood
just Dawood
Mindset.
Mindset. Carol Dweck, Omar, we can't, there's no dirt to good books. Mindset by Carol Dweck is another big read that I
Oh
endorse.
yes, oh yes, yes, absolutely, and that's one of my favorite books as well. Mindset by Dr. Carol Dweck. And in fact, I should also take this opportunity to thank you for giving me the opportunity to address your students. At Golden Sparrow Hub, virtually. It was sometime last year, and I had a wonderful time speaking to the students, and I think that they were all extremely enthusiastic. It was at the height of COVID, so I think it was actually for longer than a year back, probably a year and a half back or 2 years
Yes,
back. So
yes.
time really flies. So yes, I had a opportunity to also speak to the students at Rice University recently, courtesy of Dr. Craig Considine,
Wow.
who is coming up in the episode after this one. But yes, I do thank you both, for giving me this opportunity because I never consider myself an intellectual by no means, because I always tell people that I just simply talk to intellectuals, like yourself, like Dr. Considine. So who am I to be able to be speaking to other people? But thank you so much, nevertheless, for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. So
We
Dawood, on the
loved it, and Omar,
yeah.
your humility shines through. I think my kids loved it, and don't worry, there is a ticket coming your way to Mumbai. I mean, we love to see you in person, in flesh and blood.
Oh, for sure, and we'd love to reciprocate as well, and have you visit Dhaka as well. I know that you've been to Chittagong a couple of times. That was my city of birth, but we would love to have you come to
Lovely.
Dhaka as well and to address our students, whether it's at North South University, where I graduated from, or one of our schools. I'm sure that our students all across Bangladesh would be able to benefit from your knowledge and what you bring to the table. So once again, Dr. Dawood Vaid, thank you so much, sir, for your time. You've been a wonderful guest. I've really enjoyed talking to you. I really treasure everything that you do. Leaving your job as a patent officer in Switzerland, no less, exactly like Einstein did, and coming back to India and to educate your students who are, I'm sure, benefiting from your wealth of knowledge and wisdom every single day. So thank you so much for what you do. And I Godspeed to you in continuing for the far foreseeable future. So thank you once again for your time.
Thank you so much, Omar. Thank you so much, Omar.